The stars looked peaceful from Earth. For thousands of years, humans had gazed at them, wondering if they were alone. On a quiet Tuesday morning, they got their answer. Captain James Reed sat in the control room of the Global Space Defense Center, sipping his coffee. At 42, he had spent most of his life preparing for a moment he never truly believed would come. His gray eyes focused on the screen as the strange signal appeared again. "What do you think it is?" asked Mike, the communications officer. Reed shook his head. "Not sure. But it's not one of ours. The signal had first appeared 3 days ago, a pattern too regular to be natural, too complex to be simple interference. It came from somewhere beyond Jupiter's orbit and repeated exactly every 4 hours. "Sir," called out technician Anna Wilson from her station, "the signal has changed." Reed walked to her screen. The pattern now pulsed differently, almost like it was responding to their attempts to decode it. "It knows we're listening," Reed said quietly. Within hours, the world's leaders had been informed. Within days, Reed found himself commanding the Thunder, Earth's most advanced military spacecraft, heading toward Jupiter to investigate. The Thunder wasn't built for first contact. It was a warship designed to protect Earth's growing colonies on the Moon and Mars. But it was the best they had. A sleek, nuclear-powered vessel with basic weapons systems and a crew of 30 specialists. "Captain, we're picking up something massive ahead," reported Jack, the sensor operator. It's huge." Reed looked at the main screen. At first he saw nothing but the blackness of space and Jupiter's massive form in the distance. Then he saw it, a dark shape blocking the stars, moving slowly toward them. "Full stop," ordered Reed. "All systems on standby. Let's not appear threatening." The alien ship became clearer as it approached. It was at least 10 times larger than the Thunder, shaped like a massive arrowhead with glowing lines running along its dark hull. It moved with impossible grace for something so large. "Are they responding to our signals?" Reed asked. "Nothing, sir," Mike replied. "Wait, we're being scanned. Some kind of energy beam is passing through the ship." Before Reed could respond, every screen on the Thunder went dark. The engines shut down. Only life support and minimal lighting remained functional. "Status report," Reed demanded. "Sir, all systems are down," Anna said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "They've somehow disabled everything without firing a shot." Reed felt a cold weight in his stomach. In seconds, this alien vessel had neutralized Earth's most advanced warship like it was shutting off a light switch. "Captain," Mike called out, his voice strange. "You need to see this." A new image appeared on the main screen, not from their systems, but projected somehow. A being stood looking at them. It appeared almost human, but with gray-blue skin, large eyes, and no visible hair. It wore what looked like armor made of flowing metal. "I am Krell, commander of the Vex expansion fleet," the being said in perfect English. "Your vessel has been secured. You will be brought aboard for assessment." A bright light filled the Thunder, and Reed felt a strange pulling sensation. When he could see again, he stood in a large, circular room with walls that seemed to shift colors. His entire bridge crew stood with him, looking confused and frightened. Krull entered, flanked by 2 taller beings carrying what could only be weapons. "Captain James Reed," Krull said. "Your identification was easy to extract from your primitive systems. Why have you come to our system?" Reed asked, stepping forward. He noticed the other Vex tensed, but Krell seemed unconcerned. "Expansion is necessary," Krull replied simply. "Your solar system has resources we require. Your species will be cataloged and assigned appropriate status within our hierarchy. We won't surrender our home without a fight," Reed said. Krull made a gesture that might have been amusement. 17 systems before yours said the same. All now serve the Vex. Your resistance would be brief. The casual confidence chilled Reed more than any threat. "Come," Krull said. "I will show you why resistance would be unwise." Reed and his officers were led through corridors that seemed to shift and change as they walked. The ship was eerily quiet despite its size. "Where is everyone?" asked Anna. "A ship this size should have thousands of crew members. The Dominion requires minimal organic oversight," Krull explained. "Most functions are automated or controlled by our integrated systems." They entered what appeared to be a command center, though nothing like the bridge of human ships. It was a vast space with few physical controls. Vex operators stood in circles of light, moving their hands through holographic displays. A massive window showed the Thunder, now dwarfed by the alien flagship. "This is the Dominion," Krull said with obvious pride. "The most advanced vessel in the Vex fleet. It can destroy a planet's military installations without damaging valuable resources." Reed studied everything he could see, memorizing details. If they survived this, Earth would need every bit of intelligence he could gather. "You said we're being assessed," Reed said carefully. "What does that mean?" "Your species will be evaluated for usefulness," Krull replied. "Some species serve as laborers. Others have valuable genetic traits. Some prove too primitive or aggressive to be worth preserving." "And who decides that?" Reed asked. "I do," Krull said simply. "I have overseen the integration of 17 systems. Yours will be the 18th. Reed looked back at the Thunder, floating helplessly in space. Earth's best technology looked like a child's toy next to the Dominion. "Your vessel has been thoroughly scanned," Krull continued. "Your weapons would not penetrate our outer shields. Your engines cannot outrun us. Your communications cannot hide from us." Reed stood straighter. "There's more to humans than our technology." Krull studied Reed with those large alien eyes. "Yes, that is why you are here instead of simply eliminated. You show unusual patterns. Your species deserves proper study before classification." As Reed and his crew were led to what would be their quarters, or cells, he caught a glimpse through another window. More Vex ships were emerging from what looked like a tear in space itself. A fleet was gathering. The invasion of Earth had begun, and humanity had no idea what they were facing. Their only advantage was that the Vex didn't seem to consider them a serious threat, just another species to be catalogued and conquered. Reed made a silent promise. The Vex would learn that humans were unlike any species they had encountered before. Somehow, some way, he would make sure of it. Thomas Wells was not a soldier. With his thin frame and thick glasses, he looked more like a professor than an engineer for Earth's military. But his mind made him valuable, perhaps the most valuable human aboard the Dominion. 3 weeks had passed since the Thunder's crew had been captured. Unlike what Reed had expected, they weren't treated as prisoners but as curiosities. The Vex provided comfortable quarters and allowed them to move within certain areas of the massive ship. Wells spent every moment he could studying Vex technology. At first, the aliens were cautious, but when they saw his genuine fascination, they allowed him greater access. They seemed to enjoy his amazement, like adults showing toys to a child. "The power systems are incredible," Wells told Reed during their daily meeting in Reed's quarters. They spoke quietly, though both suspected the Vex monitored everything. "They use some kind of controlled reaction that's far beyond our fusion technology." Reed nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. Through the small window of his room, he could see Jupiter growing smaller. The Vex fleet was moving inward, toward Earth. "They're letting you see too much," Reed said. "Why would they show an enemy their technology?" Wells adjusted his glasses. "Because they don't see us as a threat. To them, it's like showing a car engine to a caveman." This stung Reed's pride, but he knew it was true. The gap between human and Vex technology was enormous. "Have you noticed something strange about the crew?" Wells asked suddenly. Reed looked up. "What do you mean?" "There are so few of them," Wells explained, lowering his voice further. "For a ship this size, I've counted maybe 200 Vex, and they don't make decisions." Reed leaned forward. "Explain." "They follow procedures. Everything is by the book. When something unexpected happens, They freeze until their systems tell them what to do. Wells tapped his head. They rely completely on their AI. It's why they're letting us walk around. Their systems calculated we can't possibly threaten them. This was the first potentially useful information Reed had heard. Can we use that somehow? Wells shrugged. Maybe. Their technology is superior, but their thinking is predictable. Their conversation was interrupted by the door sliding open. Krell stood there, flanked by guards. "Captain Reed," Krell said, "your planet's governments are responding to our arrival. You will assist in communications." Reed was led to the command center, where a massive screen showed the panicked faces of Earth's leaders. The Vex fleet had positioned itself near Mars, a show of force that couldn't be ignored. "Tell them resistance is impractical," Krell instructed Reed. "Explain what you have seen." Reed stepped forward, seeing the fear in the eyes of people he had sworn to protect. "This is Captain James Reed of the Thunder. The alien force calls themselves the Vex. Their technology is," he hesitated, "advanced beyond our current capabilities." The president of the United Earth Alliance spoke up. "Captain, are you under duress?" Reed chose his words carefully. "I am being treated well. The Vex wish for peaceful integration of Earth into their system." "Integration?" another leader asked. "Surrender," Reed clarified, earning a sharp look from Krell. "But they promise minimal disruption to civilian life." The conversation continued, with Earth's leaders trying to negotiate while the Vex simply stated their terms. Resource extraction would begin immediately. Human military forces would stand down. Resistance would result in focused removal of opposition. After the communication ended, Reed was returned to his quarters. He paced the small room, feeling the weight of what was happening. Earth was about to be conquered, and he had just advised surrender. Hours later, Wells burst into his room, eyes wide with excitement. "I found something," he whispered urgently. "A way out." Reed gestured for him to continue. "The Vex use automated systems for everything, even security," Wells explained. "And those systems are designed to detect logical patterns of escape. But if we do something completely illogical, they might not notice." Reed finished the thought. Wells nodded enthusiastically. "Plus, I've been mapping the ship. There's a hangar of smaller vessels not far from our quarters. If we could reach it." Reed felt hope for the first time in weeks. "We'd need a distraction." "Already working on it," Wells said with a smile. "I've been asking questions about their power systems. I think I can trigger a diagnostic reset in this section. It would only give us minutes, but maybe enough." Reed considered their odds. Even if they escaped the Dominion, they'd be in a stolen alien craft they barely knew how to fly, pursued by the most advanced fleet in the known galaxy. "We need more than escape," Reed said finally. "We need information. Something Earth can use." Wells pulled a small device from his pocket. It looked like a Vex data tablet, but with obvious modification. "I've been recording everything," he said. "Power systems, propulsion, weapons. I don't understand most of it, but our scientists back home might." Reed stared at the engineer with new respect. "You planned this from the beginning." Wells shrugged. "I'm not a soldier, but I'm still fighting for Earth, just in my own way." 2 days later, as the Vex fleet began positioning for the final approach to Earth, their plan went into action. Wells triggered a power fluctuation that sent Vex crews running to check systems. In the confusion, Reed led a small group including Wells and Anna to the secondary hangar. The smaller Vex craft were still intimidatingly alien, but Wells had studied enough to get one activated. As alarms began to sound, they launched from the Dominion, speeding away from the massive flagship. "They're not pursuing," Anna called out, watching the sensors Wells had shown her how to monitor. "They don't think we're worth the effort," Reed said grimly. "Or they know we can't escape." Wells worked frantically at the controls. "I'm trying to figure out how to use their version of faster-than-light travel. If I can just..." The ship shuddered as a beam of energy passed nearby. A warning shot. They won't let us reach Earth, Reed realized. They can't risk us bringing information. Wells looked up, his face pale but determined. Then we don't go to Earth. Not directly. We go somewhere they won't expect. Using the ship's incredible speed, they shot towards Saturn, hiding in its massive rings. The pursuing Vex vessels, clearly not expecting such an irrational course, lost track of them temporarily. This won't fool them for long, Reed warned. Long enough, Wells replied, transferring data to a small emergency beacon they had brought from the Thunder. Long enough to send what we know to Earth. As the beacon launched, speeding toward Earth with its precious cargo of Vex secrets, Reed watched the Vex ships beginning to close in again. What now? Anna asked quietly. Reed looked at his small crew, these brave humans who had just changed the course of history. Now, he said with grim determination, we make sure that beacon reaches Earth, no matter what it costs us. Admiral Lisa Grant had never seen the leaders of Earth agree on anything so quickly. The data from Reed's beacon had changed everything. Time is critical, she told the assembled group of scientists, engineers, and military officials gathered in the underground facility in Antarctica. The Vex believe Captain Reed and his team died in Saturn's rings. They don't know what we have. What they had was a miracle. Engineer Wells had managed to capture the fundamental principles behind Vex technology. Not everything, but enough to give humanity a fighting chance. Project Horizon begins today, Grant announced. One ship, the most advanced vessel humans have ever built. In the months that followed, as the Vex established mining operations on Mars and began stripping the asteroid belt of resources, Earth worked in secret. The best minds from every nation came together in the hidden facility carved deep into the Antarctic ice. Thomas Wells had survived. The beacon had been a trick. The Vex destroyed a decoy while Wells, Reed, and their small team used the confusion to slip past the alien fleet and return to Earth. Now Wells led the engineering team, working 18-hour days to translate Vex technology into something humans could build and operate. The key is the power source, Wells explained to Reed during a rare break. They stood in front of a massive window overlooking the construction bay where Horizon was taking shape. We can't replicate it exactly, but we can create a hybrid system. Reed nodded, watching workers swarm over the half-built ship. It was smaller than the Vex vessels, about twice the size of the Thunder, with a sleek design that reminded him of ancient sea predators. Will it be enough? Reed asked. Wells pushed his glasses up. The Vex rely completely on their AI and automated systems. That's their weakness. Horizon will have Vex-based technology, but human control. Unpredictability is our advantage. Reed studied his friend. Wells had changed in the months since their escape. He was thinner, more focused, driven by purpose. The crew? Reed asked. Being selected now, Wells replied. People who think differently. Artists, gamblers, people who make intuitive leaps. The kind of thinking the Vex can't predict. 6 months after the project began, Horizon was ready for its first test. The ship gleamed under the lights of the launch bay, its dark hull absorbing rather than reflecting light, making it look like a ship-shaped hole in reality. Reed stood on the bridge, now officially the captain of humanity's last hope. His crew of 20 had been chosen from thousands of candidates, not just for their skills, but for their creativity and adaptability. Power systems online, reported Anna, who had survived with them, and now served as Horizon's operations officer. Hybrid core stable. Reed took a deep breath. Engage stealth systems and prepare for launch. Unlike the Thunder's rumbling engines, Horizon lifted with barely a whisper. The Vex-inspired propulsion system worked perfectly, accelerating the ship out of Earth's atmosphere with a smoothness that felt impossible. We're clear of Earth orbit, Anna announced. No sign of Vex detection. Reed nodded. Take us to the test coordinates near Jupiter's moon Europa. Wells stood beside Reed, monitoring the hybrid systems he had designed. Power efficiency is better than expected. The Vex-inspired hull is absorbing all scans that hit us. Reed allowed himself a small smile. For the first time since the Vex arrived, he felt hope. They reached the test area in hours rather than days, thanks to the modified Vex drive. Reed ordered a full systems check before they began testing the weapon systems that Wells had designed, a combination of Vex energy weapons and human tactical innovations. "Captain," called out Jack from the sensor station, his voice tense. 3 Vex ships approaching from the asteroid belt. Reed immediately ordered battle stations. They weren't supposed to be in this sector. "They must have detected our power signature," Wells said, working frantically at his console. "The drive gives off a unique energy pattern." Reed had to make a decision. They could flee back to Earth, but that would lead the Vex straight to their secret base. They could try to hide, but the alien ships were already tracking them. "Prepare for engagement," Reed ordered. "Power to weapons and shields." His crew looked at him with wide eyes. Horizon was untested in battle. They were about to face 3 Vex cruisers with a ship that had never fired its weapons. The Vex ships approached in perfect formation, their massive forms dwarfing Horizon. A communication came through. "Unidentified vessel," the Vex voice said. "Your configuration is not recognized. Power down and prepare for boarding." Reed ignored the command. "Tactical, target the lead ship's propulsion system. Let's see what our weapons can do." The weapons officer, a former game designer named Paul, locked onto the target. "Ready, sir." "Fire." A beam of concentrated energy, based on Vex designs but modified by human engineers, shot from Horizon and struck the lead Vex cruiser. To everyone's surprise, the alien ship's shields flickered and failed where the beam hit, and the engine section took damage. "It worked," Wells exclaimed. "Their shields weren't calibrated for our modified weapons signature." The Vex ships immediately changed formation, spreading out to surround Horizon. "They're using standard Vex tactical pattern Delta," Anna reported, referring to the battle formations they had learned from studying Vex data. "Exactly as expected." Reed smiled. "But we don't need to be predictable. Helm, full power to starboard thrusters, then cut all power for 3 seconds before re-engaging." The helmsman, a woman named Linda who had been a stunt pilot before the invasion, grinned. "Yes, sir." Horizon lurched to the right, then went dark, drifting in space. The Vex ships adjusted to intercept but were caught off guard when Horizon powered back up directly between 2 of their vessels. "Fire port and starboard weapons simultaneously," Reed ordered. Both Vex ships took hits to their vulnerable areas. One began to spin, its propulsion damage. The other managed to return fire, but Horizon's shields, designed with knowledge of Vex weapons, held. The 3rd Vex ship attempted to retreat, clearly intending to report this new threat. "Can't let them warn the fleet," Reed said. "Maximum speed, intercept course." Horizon shot forward, overtaking the fleeing Vex vessel with surprising speed. A final volley from their main weapon disabled the alien ship's engines. In less than 10 minutes, Horizon had defeated 3 Vex cruisers without taking significant damage. The bridge crew sat in stunned silence before breaking into cheers. Wells clapped Reed on the shoulder, his eyes shining. "It worked," he said simply. "It actually worked." Reed nodded, but kept his expression serious. This was just the beginning. They were scout ships, not their main fleet, and now they know we have new technology. "But they don't know what we know about them," Wells replied. "Their predictability, their reliance on AI, their standard responses. We can use that." Reed looked at the disabled Vex ships on the view screen. "Send a message to Admiral Grant. Tell her Project Horizon is a success, and tell her," he paused, allowing himself a moment of satisfaction. "Tell her the counterattack has begun." News of Horizon's victory spread across Earth like wildfire. 1 ship had defeated 3 Vex cruisers. 1 ship had proven humanity could fight back. Reed stood in Admiral Grant's office, giving his report on the battle. The Admiral listened carefully, her weathered face showing little emotion until Reed finished. "So the Vex don't know how we did it?" she asked. "No, ma'am," Reed replied. "We disabled all 3 ships before they could send detailed information. Their main fleet knows something happened, but not what." Grant nodded slowly. "Good. We need to keep it that way." She walked to a large map of the solar system showing Vex positions. "We can't match them ship for ship. Horizon is our only advanced vessel. We need to use it wisely." "Hit and run," Reed suggested. "Strike where they don't expect, then disappear before they can respond." "Exactly," Grant agreed. Guerrilla warfare in space. Over the next month, Horizon became Earth's secret weapon. Reed and his crew struck Vex mining operations in the asteroid belt, disabled communication relays near Mars, and even raided a small Vex base on Titan, Saturn's largest moon. Each victory was small, but together they began to disrupt the Vex operation in the solar system. More importantly, they created confusion. The Vex, used to easy conquests and predictable enemies, couldn't understand how a single ship could cause so much damage. After each mission, Horizon would return to the hidden Antarctic base for repairs and improvements. Wells and his team constantly upgraded the ship, learning more from each encounter with Vex technology. "They're adapting," Wells told Reed after a particularly close battle near Venus. They sat in the ship's small mess hall, drinking coffee while the crew rested. "Their shields are being modified to counter our weapons." Reed nodded. He had noticed the Vex defenses improving. "Can we stay ahead of them?" "For now," Wells said, though he looked worried. "But there's something else. The Vex ships we've encountered recently have had more crew, fewer automated systems." This was concerning news. If the Vex were reducing their reliance on predictable AI, Horizon's main advantage would diminish. Before Reed could respond, Anna rushed into the mess hall. "Captain, Admiral Grant is on the emergency channel. The Vex flagship is on the move." Reed and Wells hurried to the bridge, where Grant's grim face filled the main screen. "The Dominion has left Mars orbit," she said without preamble. "It's heading for the outer system with a fleet of 20 ships. Intelligence suggests they're hunting for Horizon." Reed felt a chill. The Dominion was the massive ship that had captured the Thunder. It was at least 50 times larger than Horizon, and carried weapons they had never seen used. "Who's commanding it?" Reed asked, already suspecting the answer. "Krell," Grant confirmed. "Apparently your escapes and raids have made him look bad. He's taken personal command of the hunt." Wells stepped forward. "Admiral, if the Dominion finds this base—" "I know," Grant interrupted. "That's why Horizon needs to draw them away from Earth. Keep them chasing shadows while we prepare our defenses." Reed understood the order beneath her words. Horizon was to be bait, keeping the Vex fleet occupied and away from Earth for as long as possible. "We'll leave immediately," Reed said. Once Horizon was safely in space, Reed gathered his crew on the bridge. "This mission is different," he explained. "We're not attacking. We're distracting the most powerful Vex ship in the system." "Playing cat and mouse, asked Linda, the helm officer. "Yes," Reed nodded. "But we're the mouse." They traveled to Neptune's orbit, where the vast blue planet and its many moons would provide places to hide. Reed ordered the ship into a low-power mode that Wells had developed, making them nearly invisible to Vex scanners. 2 days later, the Vex fleet arrived. The massive form of the Dominion led the way, its dark hull blotting out the stars. Smaller cruisers spread out, beginning a systematic search pattern. "They're being thorough," Anna observed from her station. "Standard Vex search pattern, but with modifications." Reed watched the scanner. "They're learning." For 3 days, Horizon played a dangerous game of hide and seek around Neptune and its moons. The ship would power up just enough to be detected, draw several Vex vessels away from the main fleet, then disappear again before they could be caught. "We can't keep this up forever," Wells warned after a particularly close call. "Our power reserves are dropping, and they're getting better at tracking us. Reed knew he was right. It was time for a more direct approach. Set course for Triton, he ordered, referring to Neptune's largest moon. Full power once we're behind it. The plan was risky. When Horizon emerged from behind Triton at full power, several Vex ships immediately locked onto them. But instead of running, Reed ordered an attack on the nearest cruiser. The battle was fierce but brief. Horizon disabled 2 Vex ships before retreating, but took damage to its port engine section. Engineering reports the hybrid drive is unstable. Anna called out as the ship shuddered around them. We can't maintain this speed for long. Reed studied the tactical display. The remaining Vex ships were pursuing, with the Dominion following behind. Plot a course through the Kuiper Belt, he ordered. We need more places to hide. For the next week, Horizon led the Vex fleet on a chase through the outer solar system. The ship's condition worsened with each skirmish, but they managed to disable 5 more Vex vessels. Then came the message from Earth. Admiral Grant's face appeared on the screen, looking both proud and sad. Captain Reed, you've given us the time we needed, she said. Earth defenses are as ready as they'll ever be. It's time to implement the final phase. Reed understood. Operation Sunward. Grant nodded. The Vex fleet is scattered thanks to your efforts. Most of their ships are chasing you in the outer system. If we're going to strike at their command structure, it has to be now. Reed looked around at his tired crew. They had been fighting for weeks, pushing Horizon to its limits. Now they were being asked for one more sacrifice. We'll bring the Dominion to Saturn, Reed promised. Just be ready when we arrive. After ending the transmission, Reed addressed his crew. This is it. One final mission. We're going to lead the Dominion into a trap at Saturn. The rings? Wells asked, understanding immediately. Reed nodded. The perfect place for an ambush. As Horizon set course for Saturn, Reed couldn't help but remember his first encounter with the Vex, hiding in those same rings after their escape. Now they were returning, not as fugitives, but as warriors, leading humanity's greatest enemy into what would be the decisive battle of the war. The Dominion followed, just as Reed had planned. Krall's obsession with capturing Horizon had blinded him to the larger strategy. As they approached Saturn's majestic rings, Reed prepared his crew for what would either be their finest moment or their last. All stations, prepare for battle, he ordered. Let's show them what a human warship can really do. Saturn's rings spread out like a vast battlefield, billions of ice particles and rocks reflecting the distant sun. Perfect for hiding. Perfect for an ambush. Horizon drifted among the debris, running on minimal power. The damage from their long campaign showed on the ship's hull, burn marks from Vex weapons, patched sections where emergency repairs had been made, systems running at reduced capacity. The Dominion has entered Saturn's orbit, Anna reported, her voice low as if the enemy might hear them through the vacuum of space. 5 support cruisers with it. Reed nodded, studying the tactical display. His plan was simple but dangerous. Lure the Dominion into the densest part of the rings, where the massive flagship would have limited maneuverability, then strike with everything they had left. What about Earth's forces? Reed asked. In position but hidden, Wells answered from his station. Admiral Grant has 3 modified ships waiting behind Titan. Not as advanced as Horizon, but they've incorporated some of our technology. It wasn't much, just 3 ships against the most powerful vessel in the Vex fleet. But it was everything Earth could muster. Reed took a deep breath. Begin Phase 1. Power up just enough to be detected, then lead them into the Cassini Division. The Cassini Division was a 4,800-kilometer wide gap in Saturn's rings, large enough for ships to maneuver, but surrounded by dense ring material that would confuse sensors. Horizon powered up its engines, sending a brief energy signature into space, a beacon for the hunting Vex ships. Then it slipped deeper into the rings, following a course Wells had plotted through the debris. They've detected us, Anna confirmed. Dominion is changing course to pursue. Reed watched as the massive Vex flagship turned toward their position, its support ships spreading out to block escape routes. Krell was being cautious this time, not underestimating his human prey. "They're deploying smaller craft," Jack reported from the sensor station. "Dozens of them." This was new. The Vex hadn't used fighter-sized vessels before. Reed adjusted his plan. "Tactical, prepare the modified mines," he ordered. One of Wells' innovations had been to convert spare parts into small, simple explosive devices that could be scattered in the rings, indistinguishable from the natural debris until they detonated. As Horizon pushed deeper into the Cassini division, it left behind a trail of these disguised weapons. When the first wave of small Vex craft followed, several mines exploded, destroying 3 ships and damaging others. "They're pulling back," Anna said. "Regrouping." Reed nodded. "Now for Phase 2. Full power to engines. Make for the Ankh Gap." Horizon burst from its hiding place, engines flaring brightly as it raced along Saturn's rings. The sudden movement caught the Vex by surprise, but they quickly adjusted, the Dominion turning to pursue while its escort ships tried to cut off Horizon's route. 2 cruisers approaching from port, Jack called out. "They're trying to box us in." Reed smiled grimly. "Just as expected. Execute Maneuver Delta." Linda at the helm grinned as she cut all main power, letting Horizon's momentum carry it forward while firing lateral thrusters in a seemingly random pattern. The ship tumbled, appearing to be damaged and out of control. The Vex cruisers closed in for the kill. "Now," Reed ordered. Horizon's systems came back online instantly. The ship stabilized and fired its main weapons directly at the nearest cruiser's propulsion section, its most vulnerable point. The Vex ship's engines exploded, sending it spinning into the second cruiser. Both ships, damaged and unable to maneuver properly, drifted into Saturn's rings where the debris battered them. But there was no time to celebrate. The Dominion was gaining, its massive weapons charging. "They're locking weapons," Anna shouted. "Execute emergency dive," Reed ordered calmly. Horizon plunged downward relative to the plane of Saturn's rings, passing through the thin band of ice and rock at tremendous speed. Particles pinged off the hull as the ship accelerated. The Dominion fired, its energy weapon cutting through the rings where Horizon had been moments before, vaporizing millions of ice particles and creating a spectacular-like show. "They missed," Jack confirmed, "but they're adjusting aim." Reed leaned forward in his chair. "Send the signal." Wells pressed a sequence on his console, sending a coded message to the Earth ships hiding behind Titan. It was time for the trap to close. "Bring us around," Reed ordered. "Back toward the Dominion. Maximum speed." His crew looked at him in shock. "Sir," Linda questioned, "we're heading straight for them." "Sometimes the last thing they expect is a direct approach," Reed said. "Full power to forward shields. Prepare all remaining weapons." Horizon turned and accelerated directly toward the massive Vex flagship. The Dominion, not expecting such a suicidal attack, hesitated for crucial seconds. In that moment, Earth's 3 ships emerged from behind Titan, racing toward the Dominion from the opposite direction. Caught between approaching enemies, the Vex ship began to turn, bringing its weapons to bear on multiple targets. "Now comes the tricky part," Reed said. "All hands, prepare for extreme maneuvers." As they closed with the Dominion, Reed gave a series of orders that made no logical sense. Random power fluctuations, course changes that seemed to have no purpose, weapon targeting that ignored obvious weak points. The Vex ship's defensive systems, programmed to counter logical attacks, struggled to predict Horizon's movements. "They can't track us properly," Wells said, watching the enemy's targeting systems try and fail to lock onto Horizon. "Their AI can't understand what we're doing because there's no pattern to understand." Reed nodded. "Because we're not following any pattern. We're being human." In contrast, the Dominion's responses were becoming increasingly predictable as its systems fell back on programmed defensive routines. Each time it fired, Horizon was already moving in an unexpected direction. "Get me a communication channel to the Dominion," Reed ordered. Anna looked surprised but opened the channel. "You're connected, sir." "Commander Krell," Reed said calmly, "your ship is surrounded. Your escort vessels disabled. Surrender now." There was a pause before Krell's voice came through, sounding genuinely confused. "You cannot win, human. Our analysis shows your ship is damaged. Your weapons cannot penetrate our main shields." "Analysis," Reed repeated. "That's your problem, Krell. You rely too much on your machines to think for you. You've forgotten how to be unpredictable." As if to demonstrate his point, Horizon suddenly cut all power, drifting dead in space for 3 critical seconds before reactivating directly beneath the Dominion's main sensor array. The human ship fired all weapons simultaneously at this blind spot, causing the massive flagship to shudder. At the same moment, Earth's 3 ships attacked from different angles, targeting the same weakened section of the Dominion's shields. For the first time, the mighty Vex flagship took significant damage. "Their shield harmonics are failing," Wells called out excitedly. "One more coordinated strike." The bridge rocked as the Dominion managed to land a glancing hit on Horizon. Warning lights flashed across every console. "Hull breach on Deck 3, Anna reported. "Emergency teams responding." Reed gripped his chair as the ship stabilized. "All ships, focus fire on coordinates I'm sending now." The 4 human vessels, moving in completely unpredictable patterns, converged their fire on a single point on the Dominion's hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like a crack spreading across glass, the Vex flagship's hull split open, exposing internal systems to space. "They're losing power," Wells reported, unable to keep the amazement from his voice. "Their main reactor is shutting down to prevent catastrophic failure." On the main screen, Reed watched as the mighty Dominion, pride of the Vex fleet, went dark, emergency systems barely keeping it intact. Around the solar system, the remaining Vex ships suddenly began retreating, responding to some silent command. "They're leaving," Anna said, checking long-range sensors. "All Vex ships are breaking orbit, heading for the outer system." The bridge crew sat in stunned silence before breaking into cheers. Reed leaned back in his chair, feeling the weight of months of fighting finally lifting. "Captain," Anna called over the celebration. "Incoming transmission from the Dominion." "It's Krell." Reed nodded, and the Vex commander's face appeared on screen. For the first time, the alien looked uncertain. "How?" Krell asked simply. "Our technology is superior. Our systems more advanced. How did you defeat us?" Reed looked at his crew, humans who had faced impossible odds and won through creativity, courage, and unpredictability. "Because a warship isn't just technology," Reed answered. "It's the people who crew it. And humans don't follow predictable patterns. We adapt. We create. We surprise even ourselves sometimes." Krell was silent for a long moment. "The Vex will withdraw from this system," he finally said. "Your species has proven, unique among those we have encountered." The transmission ended. The Vex fleet, once poised to conquer Earth, retreated to the edges of the solar system and beyond, leaving humanity battered but victorious. 3 months later, Reed stood with Wells and Admiral Grant on a viewing platform overlooking a massive construction bay in orbit around Earth. Below them, workers swarmed over the skeletons of a dozen ships, each based on Horizon's design, but incorporating new improvements. "The Neon Horizon class," Grant said proudly, "Earth's new defense fleet." Wells pointed to modifications on the nearest vessel. "We've improved the hybrid drive. These ships will be faster, more powerful." Reed nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. "They'll be back, or others like them. There's a whole galaxy out there. And now we're ready for it," Grant said firmly. "Thanks to you, Wells, and the crew of Horizon." Reed watched as Earth's new warships took shape below. Ships so advanced, they might once have seemed like something from a science fiction story. Ships that represented not just human technology but human spirit. The Vex had brought superior technology to our solar system, but they had encountered something they didn't understand: the unpredictable, creative, stubborn determination of humanity. And in the end, that had made all the difference. Reed smiled as the first new ship's engines powered up for testing, its hull gleaming in the sunlight like a beacon of humanity's future among the stars. The grand hall of the Galactic Coalition headquarters buzzed with nervous energy. 42 different alien species sat around the massive circular table, their differences in shape, size, and color a testament to the diversity of intelligent life in the galaxy. But today, they shared one thing in common: fear. "The Vorn fleet has destroyed 3 more border outposts," announced General Thax, a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms. His upper hands manipulated the holographic display in the center of the table, showing red dots where Coalition territories had fallen. Their main battle group will reach the Kalmar system within 5 days. Voices rose in alarm. The Kalmar system was a major trade hub, home to billions of civilians. If it fell, the Vorn would gain a foothold deep in Coalition space. "We must gather all available ships to defend it," said Ambassador Rill, her feathered crest rising in agitation. "Every member world must contribute to the defense fleet." More voices joined, offering suggestions, arguing about tactics, debating the merits of evacuation versus defense. The noise grew until Admiral Dorn slammed his fist on the table. Silence fell instantly. Admiral Dorn rarely spoke at these meetings, but when he did, everyone listened. The old warrior's gray skin was crisscrossed with scars, and his single remaining eye glowed with a fierce light. He had fought in more battles than most of the others had witnessed from their command centers. "There is another option," he said, his voice like gravel. "We could ask the humans for help." The silence deepened, becoming something almost physical. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Surely you're not suggesting—" Ambassador Rill let her words trail off, unable to finish the thought. "I am," Dorn said firmly. "We ask the humans to send the Nemesis." The name hung in the air like a curse. Several of the younger officers looked confused, but the veterans, those old enough to remember the last Great War, exchanged knowing glances. "Most of you have only heard stories," Admiral Dorn continued, his eyes sweeping the room. "Some think they're just tales to frighten cadets. But I was there 10 years ago, when humanity was still new to our coalition." He touched the holographic controls, and the display changed to show a distant star system. New Eden, they called it. A small human colony world. It had little strategic value, but the Vorn attacked it without warning or provocation. The humans had only 1 warship close enough to respond. The hologram shifted again, showing a dark, angular vessel that seemed to absorb the light around it rather than reflect it. "The HSS Nemesis," Dorn said quietly. "We expected nothing." The humans were newcomers, their technology unremarkable by our standards. 1 ship against a Vorn battle fleet. We prepared to welcome the survivors after the inevitable defeat. He paused, his scared face grim with memory. There were survivors, but not the ones we expected. Commander Zax, one of the younger officers, leaned forward. "What happened?" "The Nemesis destroyed the entire Vorn fleet," Dorn replied. 17 capital ships, 35 support vessels, all gone. And when it was over, the human ships simply disappeared, returned to their space without a word. Murmurs filled the room. Ambassador Rill's feathers flattened against her head. "That's impossible," said General Thax. "No single ship cold." "I saw the battle records myself," Dorn cut him off. "What that ship did, it shouldn't have been possible. The humans have technologies they don't share, weapons they don't discuss. And tactics." He shook his head. "They fight like nothing I've ever seen. If this ship is so powerful, why haven't we heard of it since?" Commander Zax asked. Dorn's eye narrowed. "There was an incident 5 years ago. Something happened at Proxima Centauri. The details were classified, But afterward, the humans withdrew the Nemesis from active service. Some say they were ashamed of what it had done. The room erupted in debate. Some argued they should request human assistance immediately. Others warned against involving a force they couldn't control. In the end, a vote was taken. By a narrow margin, the coalition decided to send an envoy to Earth. Halfway across the galaxy, Captain Thomas Reed stood at the window of his small cabin, looking out at the Pacific Ocean. The morning sun glittered on the water, and for a moment, he could almost forget the dreams that had woken him before dawn. Dreams of fire and silence, and the cold void of space. The doorbell chimed. Reed didn't turn from the window. "Come in," he called, knowing who it would be. Admiral Wilson entered, her uniform crisp despite the early hour. She carried a data tablet and a look of determination that Reed recognized all too well. "They're reactivating the Nemesis," she said without preamble. Now Reed did turn, his weathered face expressionless. "Why?" "The Vorn are on the move again. The Coalition has formally requested our help." Reed laughed, a short, harsh sound with no humor in it. "After what happened at Proxima, I'm surprised they'd want us within 1,000 light-years of their precious worlds." "They're desperate," Wilson replied, "and the Joint Chiefs have agreed. The Nemesis launches in 48 hours. Reed turned back to the window. "Find someone else to command her." "There is no one else, Tom. You know that ship better than anyone alive. And despite what happened, despite the hearing and the forced retirement, you're still the best captain we have." Reed closed his eyes, seeing not the peaceful ocean, but the cold blackness of space, feeling not the warm sun, but the phantom vibration of the Nemesis's engines beneath his feet. "She's been refitted," Wilson continued. "New systems, new protocols." She hesitated. "Some of your old crew have already volunteered to return." "They're fools," then Reed said quietly. "Maybe, or maybe they believe in you, even after everything." Reed was silent for a long moment. Finally, he turned to face the Admiral. "What are the terms?" "Full autonomy. The Coalition gets your help, but you answer only to Earth Command. They don't get to know our capabilities, and they don't get to question your tactics." Reed nodded slowly. "And afterward, when the Vorn are dealt with, the Nemesis returns to Earth space, and you with it." Reed picked up the small model ship that sat on his desk, a perfect miniature of the Nemesis, black and sleek and terrible. He had carried it with him through 5 years of exile, a reminder of what he had done, what he might have to do again. "When do we leave?" he asked. Wilson handed him the data tablet. "Your reinstatement is already processed. Transport leaves for the orbital shipyard in 3 hours." As she turned to go, Reed spoke again. "Admiral, do they know? The Coalition, do they know what they're asking for?" Wilson paused at the door. "I don't think anyone truly knows what the Nemesis is capable of, Tom. Not even us. That's what scares them. That's what scares all of us." After she left, Reed looked down at the tablet. His new orders were clear. Take command of the HSS Nemesis. Defend Coalition space against Vorn aggression. Return when the mission is complete. Simple words for what would be anything but a simple task. He packed quickly, taking only what he needed. As he took one last look at his home of 5 years, he realized he felt nothing. No sadness at leaving, no joy at returning to the stars, only a cold certainty that the galaxy was about to remember why they had feared the name Nemesis, and why they had feared its captain even more. The orbital shipyard hung in space like a massive metal spider, its long arms cradling the dark shape that was the HSS Nemesis. As the shuttle approached, Reed pressed his hand against the viewport, his eyes fixed on the warship that had once been his home. The Nemesis was unlike any other ship in Earth's fleet, where most human vessels followed the same design principles as their alien counterparts, sleek, rounded hulls with a certain aesthetic appeal. The Nemesis rejected beauty for pure function. Its angular, asymmetric form was covered in weapon mounts and sensor arrays, The hull was coated with a material that absorbed rather than reflected light, making it appear as a ship-shaped hole in space. "She doesn't look 5 years older," Reed said quietly. The shuttle pilot nodded. "They've kept her ready, sir, like they knew someday they'd need her again." The shuttle docked with the shipyard, and Reed made his way through the familiar corridors. Personnel stepped aside as he passed, their faces showing a mix of respect and unease. His reputation had only grown during his absence, it seemed. At the main airlock to the Nemesis, a familiar figure waited. Commander Alex Morgan straightened to attention as Reed approached. 5 years had added some gray to Morgan's hair, but the sharp intelligence in his eyes hadn't changed. "Captain," Morgan said, offering a crisp salute. "Welcome back." Reed returned the salute. "XO, I didn't expect to see you here. Where else would I be?" When they said they were reactivating the Nemesis, I requested immediate transfer. Morgan's expression softened slightly. Most of the old bridge crew did the same. Wilson, Chen, Davis, they're all aboard. Reed felt something stir inside him. The first real emotion he'd experienced since receiving his new orders. After Proxima. After what happened, I'm surprised anyone would want to serve with me again. Morgan met his gaze steadily. "What happened at Proxima wasn't your fault, sir. Those of us who were there know that." Reed didn't respond to that. Instead, he gestured toward the airlock. "Let's see what they've done to my ship." The interior of the Nemesis was both familiar and strange. The basic layout remained the same, but Reed could see evidence of the refit that Admiral Wilson had mentioned. New control panels, updated systems, modifications to the weapons stations. As they walked through the ship, crew members stopped to acknowledge their captain's return. Some were veterans who had served on the Nemesis before, their eyes showing recognition and respect. Others were new, young faces that regarded Reed with barely concealed awe. "They've been telling stories about you," Morgan said, noticing Reed's reaction to the younger crew members. "About us. About what the Nemesis did at New Eden." "Stories get bigger with each telling," Reed replied. "Especially the scary ones." They reached the engine room, where Chief Engineer Marcus Wilson was bent over a console, arguing with a technician from the shipyard. Wilson was a large man with massive hands and a wild beard that defied military regulations. When he saw Reed, his face split into a broad grin. "Captain, about time you showed up." He waved dismissively at the technician. "Tell your supervisor I'll sign off on the changes when I'm good and ready, not before." As the technician left, grumbling, Wilson turned back to Reed and Morgan. "They've been trying to improve my engines for weeks. Idiots wouldn't know a phase inverter from a plasma regulator." Reed smiled slightly. "Some things never change. What have they done to my ship, Chief?" Wilson's expression turned serious. "A lot, sir. Some good, some." He glanced around and lowered his voice. "Some changes I don't agree with. Come see." He led them deeper into the engine room, to a sealed door marked with high security warnings. Wilson entered a code, and the door slid open to reveal a large chamber dominated by a device Reed didn't recognize. A complex arrangement of curved metal and pulsing energy fields. "What am I looking at, Chief?" Reed asked. "They're calling it the Prometheus Drive," Wilson replied. "It's what they've been working on for the past 3 years. The reason they kept the Nemesis in reserve instead of stripping her for parts." Morgan stepped closer to the device, his face reflected in its polished surfaces. "It's supposed to replace the Ghost Drive." Wilson nodded. "The Ghost Drive let us go invisible to sensors. This thing," he shook his head, "they say it can do a lot more, but it's experimental, dangerous." Reed studied the device, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. They wouldn't install it without a reason. "The Vorn," Morgan said. "They must be expecting one hell of a fight." Wilson grunted in agreement. "The techs won't tell me how it works. Say it's beyond my clearance." His beard bristled with indignation. "On my own damn ship." Reed placed a hand on the engineer's shoulder. "It's still your engine room. "Chief, I want you to learn everything you can about this new drive. If we're going to use it, I want to know exactly what it does." As they left the engine room, Reed's data tablet chimed with a message. "The Coalition representatives are docking in 30 minutes, he told Morgan. "Have the senior staff meet me in the conference room." On the bridge of the Nemesis, Reed stood before the main view screen, watching as the last of the shipyard's maintenance arms withdrew from the hull. The ship was now free, connected to the station only by docking clamps. Around him, the bridge crew worked at their stations, their movements becoming more confident as they reacquainted themselves with the ship's systems. Morgan stood at Reed's side, reviewing the final departure checklist. "All stations report ready, Captain," he said. "Pre-launch diagnostics complete. The Coalition observers are aboard and settled in their quarters." Reed nodded. "Notify Earth Command that we're prepared for departure." As Morgan relayed the message, Reed's mind drifted back to his last day on this bridge, 5 years ago. The chaos, the alarms, the desperate gamble that had saved lives but ended his career. Would it be different this time? Or was the Nemesis destined to remain what it had always been, a weapon of last resort, too powerful, too dangerous to use except in the most desperate circumstances? The communications officer looked up from her station. "Earth Command confirms launch clearance, Captain. We are ordered to proceed to the rendezvous coordinates at best speed." Reed turned to face his crew, feeling the weight of 40 pairs of eyes upon him. They were waiting for words, for inspiration, for reassurance. He had never been good at speeches. "Most of you know what we're facing," he said simply. "The Vorn aren't just raiders or pirates. They're conquerors. They've already destroyed 3 Coalition outposts, and they won't stop there." He looked around the bridge, meeting each gaze in turn. "We've faced them before. Some of you were with me at New Eden. Others have only heard the stories. Today we all find out how much of those stories is true." He turned back to the view screen, where the vast blackness of space waited. "Release docking clamps. Take us out, helm. 1/4 power until we clear the solar system. Then prepare the jump drive." As the Nemesis pulled away from the shipyard, Reed felt the subtle vibration of the engines through the deck plates. The ship seemed to come alive around him, responding to his commands as if it had been waiting for his return. Somewhere out there, the Vorn fleet was advancing toward its next target, unaware that the Nemesis had been unleashed once more, unaware that their worst nightmare was coming for them. "Captain," Morgan said quietly, so only Reed could hear. The crew was wondering, "Will we use it?" The Prometheus drive. Reed watched as the stars streaked past on the view screen. "Let's hope we don't have to. XO, for everyone's sake." But deep inside, in a place he rarely acknowledged, Reed knew better. The Nemesis hadn't been reactivated, hadn't been fitted with experimental technology, just to frighten the enemy. This time, like the last, they would be asked to do the unthinkable. And this time, like the last, they would not refuse. The Nemesis dropped out of jump space with barely a shudder, a testament to Wilson's skill with the engines. On the main screen, the Coalition fleet came into view, a collection of ships from a dozen different worlds, gathered to face the Vorn threat. 53 vessels, reported Lieutenant Davis from the sensor station, mostly light cruisers and support ships, only 6 heavy capital ships. Reed studied the fleet. Even from a distance, he could see the differences in design and technology, a reflection of the various species that made up the Coalition. Some were streamlined and elegant, built more for speed than combat. Others bristled with weapons, but lacked the advanced shielding that would keep them alive in a prolonged engagement. "Not much of a defense force," Morgan observed quietly. Reed nodded. "They've been at peace too long. Forgotten what real war looks like." "Incoming transmission from the Coalition flagship, Captain," called the communications officer. "On screen," Reed ordered. The view screen shifted to show the face of Admiral Levix, the Coalition fleet commander. Levix was from a reptilian species with scaled skin and vertical pupils, giving him a perpetually suspicious look. "Captain Reed," he said, his translator rendering his words with only a slight delay. Your arrival is timely. We had begun to fear Earth had reconsidered its commitment. The Nemesis was in reserve, Reed replied. It took time to make her ready. Levix's eyes narrowed slightly. Yes, I've heard this ship has been inactive since the Proxima incident. I trust that will not affect your performance in the coming battle. Morgan stiffened beside Reed, but the captain's expression remained neutral. The Nemesis is fully operational. Admiral, my crew is ready. We await your orders. Excellent, Levix said, though his tone suggested he was far from convinced. We're holding a strategy session in 2 hours. I expect you and your senior officers to attend. The transmission ended, and Morgan let out a breath. Friendly sort, isn't he? He's scared, Reed said. They all are, not just of the Vorn. Morgan glanced around the bridge. Of us, you mean? Reed's eyes remained on the screen, where the Coalition fleet hung against the backdrop of stars. Of what we might do. Of what we've done before. The Coalition flagship's conference room was crowded with officers from a dozen different species. When Reed entered with Morgan and Lieutenant Davis, a hush fell over the room. Eyes turned to observe the humans, their expressions ranging from curiosity to poorly concealed fear. Admiral Levix gestured to empty seats at the table. Captain Reed, please join us. We were just discussing defensive formations. Reed sat, noting how the officers on either side shifted subtly away. What's the latest intelligence on the Vorn fleet, Admiral? Levix touched a control, and a holographic display appeared above the table. It showed the predicted path of the Vorn fleet toward the Kalmar system. Our scouts report 20 capital ships, supported by approximately 40 smaller vessels. Levix's scaled face was grim. They will reach the outer defense perimeter within 18 hours. One of the Coalition captains, a tall, thin alien with luminous patches on his skin, spoke up. We've positioned automated defense platforms along their likely approach vector. When they engage those defenses, we can catch them in a pincer movement. Reed studied the tactical display, then shook his head. It won't work. The room fell silent. Levix's vertical pupils narrowed to slits. Explain. The Vorn don't fight like you do, Reed said. He stood and moved to the display, adjusting the holographic representation of the enemy fleet. They won't commit their entire force to a single attack vector. They'll probe for weaknesses, sacrifice their forward elements to identify your positions, then strike with overwhelming force at the point where you're most vulnerable. You seem quite familiar with Vorn tactics, Captain, said another Coalition officer, his tone suspicious. Reed's expression didn't change. I've fought them before. At New Eden. And at Proxima. The name hung in the air like an accusation. A murmur ran through the assembled officers. Levix leaned forward. Perhaps you would care to share your expertise with us, Captain Reed. What would you suggest? Reed looked around the room, at the alien faces both hostile and uncertain. They didn't trust him, didn't trust the Nemesis, but they needed them both. The Vorn respect strength, he said finally. They're pragmatic. They don't fight battles they don't think they can win. He pointed to different areas on the tactical display. We need to convince them that attacking Kalmar will cost them more than they can afford to lose. And how do we do that? Asked the luminous-skinned captain. Reed's face was grim. We hit them first. Hard. Show them what they're facing before they commit their main force. A preemptive strike. Levix's voice was shocked. With what? Our fleet is barely half the size of theirs. Not the entire fleet, Reed said. Just one ship. The Nemesis. The room erupted in objections. It was suicide, they said. Reckless. Impossible. Reed waited for the noise to die down before he spoke again. The Nemesis has capabilities your ships don't, he said quietly. We can bypass their forward screens, strike their command vessels, and be gone before they realize what's happening. The Ghost Drive, said one of the older officers, his voice hushed. The stories are true then. Reed didn't confirm or deny. What matters is that we can hurt them, make them reconsider their attack. Admiral Levix studied Reed for a long moment. And if this fails, if your ship is destroyed, we lose our strongest asset before the main battle even begins. It won't fail, Reed said with a certainty that silenced the room. But if you prefer, we can wait here, let them come to us, and hope your defense plan works better than I think it will. Levix's scaled face was unreadable, but after a moment, he gave a curt nod. Very well, Captain Reed. You have 12 hours to prepare your preemptive strike. But know this, if you fail, the defense of Kalmar falls to the rest of us, and we will remember who left us to face that burden alone. Back aboard the Nemesis, Reed stood in his ready room, looking at the tactical data they'd received from the Coalition. Morgan waited silently as the captain studied the enemy fleet's composition. They don't believe we can do it, Morgan said finally. Would you, in their position? Reed asked. 1 ship against 20. Morgan's lips quirked in a half smile. I've seen what this ship can do, sir. Reed nodded slowly. So have the Vorn. That's what I'm counting on. He pointed to a specific vessel in the enemy formation. This one. The command ship. That's our target. Morgan leaned closer to look. Heavy defenses. Their best shields. Also their weakest point, Reed said. If we take out their command structure, the rest of the fleet will hesitate. It might give us the opening we need. The intercom chimed, and Wilson's voice came through. Captain, we've finished the modifications to the targeting systems. But there's something you should know about the Prometheus drive. Reed exchanged a glance with Morgan. I'll be right down, Chief. As they headed for the engine room, Morgan asked the question that had been on his mind since the meeting. Sir, are you sure about this? If it doesn't work. It has to work, XO. Reed interrupted. Because if it doesn't, we're not just losing a ship or a system. His eyes were distant, remembering. I've seen what the Vorn do to worlds they conquer. What they did at Proxima before we stopped them. Morgan nodded slowly. Then we'd better make sure it works, sir. The 2 officers walked in silence through the corridors of the Nemesis, the weight of their mission settling around them like a shroud. In just a few hours, they would either strike a blow that would be remembered throughout the galaxy, or become another footnote in the growing legend of the most feared warship in space. A legend that, this time, might end in fire and silence. In the dark bridge of the Vorn command ship, War Master Krall studied the tactical display with cold, calculating eyes. His gray skin was marked with the ceremonial scars of his many victories, each one representing a conquered world. Our scouts report the Coalition fleet has gathered at Kalmar, said his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Vex. 53 vessels, mostly light craft, only 6 capital ships. Krall made a dismissive gesture with one of his 4 arms. No match for our fleet. Their defenses will fall within hours. There is one more thing, War Master, Vex said, hesitation clear in his normally confident voice. A human vessel joined their fleet 12 hours ago. Krell's head snapped up, his yellow eyes narrowing. Designation: the HSS Nemesis. The name sent a ripple of tension through the bridge crew. Many of the younger officers had never seen combat against humans, but all knew the stories. The Nemesis was a shadow in Vorn military history, a dark legend used to frighten new recruits. Krall was silent for a long moment. Unlike many of his officers, he had faced the human ship before. At New Eden, where 17 Vorn vessels had been destroyed in less than an hour, and though he had not been present at Proxima, he had reviewed the classified battle reports. The Nemesis was decommissioned, he said finally. After Proxima, the humans were too afraid to use it again. Apparently not, War Master, Vex replied. Our intelligence confirms it is the same vessel. And he hesitated again. The same captain. Reed. Krall almost hissed the name. So they've brought their demon back from exile. Another officer stepped forward. War Master, this single ship cannot change the outcome of the battle. Our new adaptive shields were specifically designed to counter human weapons technology, and we outnumber them significantly. Krull turned his yellow eyes on the officer. You weren't at New Eden, Commander Lore. You didn't see what that ship can do. He touched a control, bringing up a new tactical display. Adjust our approach. Maximum sensor sweep. I want to know where the Nemesis is at all times. You believe they will attack? Vex asked. I know Reed, Krull replied. He doesn't wait for the enemy to come to him. He strikes first. The War Master's mouth stretched in what might have been a smile on a human face, but on his alien features looked more like a grimace. Let him come. This time, we are ready. The Nemesis drifted silently through the darkness of space, all systems except life support running at minimal power. From the outside, the ship was nearly invisible against the black backdrop of space, its light-absorbing hull hiding it from visual detection. On the bridge, Reed sat in the command chair, watching the main screen where the distant lights of the Vorn fleet grew steadily larger. The bridge was lit only by the glow of essential displays, casting eerie shadows across the faces of the crew. Ghost drive functioning at 98% efficiency, Davis reported from the sensor station. We're effectively invisible to standard scans. What about their advanced sensors? Morgan asked. The briefing said they've improved their detection systems since New Eden. Reed's eyes never left the screen. That's why we're not using the jump drive to get closer. A jump signature would alert them, no matter how good our stealth systems are. The ship continued its silent approach, the tension on the bridge growing with each passing minute. They were deep in enemy territory now, with no backup and no escape route except through the heart of the Vorn fleet. 2 minutes to optimal firing range, Weapons Officer Lieutenant Park announced. Reed tapped the comm control on his chair. Engine room. Status of the Prometheus drive. Wilson's voice came back, tense but confident. Ready, Captain. But I have to repeat my concerns. The simulations show a 30% chance of drive overload if we activate it at full power. Noted, Chief, Reed replied. Be ready on my mark. As they drew closer to the Vorn fleet, Reed could make out individual ships on the screen. In the center of the formation was Krell's command vessel, a massive warship nearly twice the size of the Nemesis. Targeting solution locked, Park reported. Primary weapons charged and ready. Reed straightened in his chair. This was the moment of truth. Either their plan would work, crippling the Vorn command structure and forcing them to reconsider their attack on Kalmar, or he pushed that thought aside. Failure wasn't an option. Not again. Not after Proxima. All hands, battle stations, he ordered. Helm, bring us in on attack vector 9-3. Weapons, target their command ship's propulsion systems and bridge section. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, each knowing their role in the coming fight. Sir, Morgan said quietly, standing next to Reed's chair. I've been thinking about the Proxima incident. Reed glanced up at his XO, surprised. This isn't the time, Commander. With respect, sir, it's exactly the time. Morgan's eyes were steady. What happened there wasn't your fault. You made the only choice you could. Reed's jaw tightened. The memories of Proxima, the desperate battle, the civilian ships caught in the crossfire, the choice he'd been forced to make, flashed through his mind. 30 seconds to firing range, Park announced. We all followed your orders that day, Morgan continued, because they were the right orders, and we'll follow them today for the same reason. Before Reed could respond, Davis called out from the sensor station. Captain, they've spotted us. On the main screen, the Vorn fleet was changing formation, ships accelerating to intercept the Nemesis. How? Reed demanded. The Ghost Drive. They're using some kind of new scanning technology, Davis reported, hands flying over his console. It's cutting right through our stealth field. Reed's mind raced. The element of surprise was gone. They were outnumbered, deep in enemy space, with no hope of backup. Exactly the kind of situation the Nemesis had been built for. New plan, he said, his voice calm despite the danger. Helm, take us straight at their command ship, maximum thrust. Weapons, full spread of Reaper missiles, target their forward screen generators. Sir, Park sounded uncertain. At that range, the blast will affect us too. I'm counting on it, Reed replied. Chief Wilson, stand by with the Prometheus drive. When I give the word, I want full power, no safety limiters. Morgan's eyebrows rose. Captain, that's not. The only way out is through. XO, Reed cut him off. We hit them hard enough that they'll think twice before following. On the screen, the Vorn ships were moving into attack formation, weapons powering up. The first shots, long-range energy beams, flashed past the Nemesis, near misses as the enemy gunners struggled to get a lock on the fast-moving human ship. 15 seconds to contact, the helm officer reported, her voice steady despite the stress. Reed opened a shipwide channel. All hands, brace for impact. This is going to get rough. The Nemesis streaked toward the heart of the Vorn fleet, its engines glowing white-hot with the strain. Enemy fire intensified, some shots now finding their mark, splashing against the ship's shields in bursts of energy. Shields at 80% and falling, Davis called out. Almost there, Reed said, watching as the massive form of Krell's command ship filled the screen. Weapons, fire all Reapers on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Fire. The Nemesis shuddered as a dozen Reaper missiles, the most advanced weapons in Earth's arsenal, launched toward the Vorn command ship. Unlike conventional weapons, the Reapers briefly shifted into another dimension before reappearing inside enemy shields, making them nearly impossible to stop. Direct hits, Park shouted as explosions bloomed across the Vorn vessel's hull. Their forward shields are down. Now, Chief, Reed ordered. Activate the Prometheus drive. Deep in the ship's heart, Wilson hesitated for just a moment, then pushed the activation sequence. The experimental drive hummed to life, energy building to levels never tested outside a laboratory. On the bridge, screens flickered as power was diverted to the new system. The deck plates vibrated beneath the crew's feet, and a high-pitched whine filled the air. What's happening? Morgan asked, gripping the back of Reed's chair to stay upright. Reed's eyes were fixed on the Vorn command ship, now less than 1,000 kilometers away. Watch, he said quietly. The Prometheus drive reached full power, and for a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, a wave of energy burst from the Nemesis, spreading outward in all directions. Where it touched Vorn ships, their systems flickered and died, weapons powering down, engines stalling. The mighty command ship, already damaged by the Reaper missiles, drifted helplessly as the energy wave passed through it. Across the Vorn fleet, vessel after vessel went dark. On the Nemesis, warning alarms sounded as the Prometheus drive strained beyond its designed limits. Drive overload imminent. Wilson's voice came over the comm, nearly drowned out by the sound of failing equipment. We've got maybe 2 minutes before it blows. Reed turned to Morgan. Get us out of here. Maximum thrust. Any direction away from the Vorn fleet. As the Nemesis limped away from the disabled enemy ships, Reed allowed himself a small smile. They hadn't destroyed the Vorn fleet, but they'd done something perhaps more valuable. They'd shown them what one human ship could do. They'd given them something to fear. And fear, sometimes, was the most powerful weapon of all. Alarms blared throughout the Nemesis as the ship raced away from the disabled Vorn fleet. The deck plates vibrated with increasing intensity, and the lights flickered as power fluctuated across all systems. Engine room. Reed called over the comm. Status of the Prometheus drive. Wilson's voice came back, nearly drowned out by the sound of failing equipment. Critical overload, Captain. The containment field is failing. We need to shut it down now, or we'll lose the whole ship. Reed turned to Morgan. Options. The XO's face was grim. At this point, not many. The drive is connected to all our primary systems. Shutting it down hard could leave us dead in space. Better than being atomized, Reed muttered. He made his decision. Wilson, emergency shutdown. All hands, prepare for power loss. Throughout the ship, crew members braced themselves. In the engine room, Wilson and his team worked frantically, rerouting power and disengaging safety protocols designed to prevent exactly what they were now attempting. Cutting main power to the drive in 3, 2, 1. Wilson's voice counted down. Now. The Nemesis shuddered violently as the Prometheus drive shut down. For a terrifying moment, all lights and systems went dark. The ship drifted silently, wounded but intact. On the bridge, emergency lighting cast an eerie red glow over the crew. Reed gripped the arms of his command chair, counting the seconds in his head. 3, 4, 5. With a series of clicks and hums, the backup systems engage. Basic life support, minimal propulsion, emergency communications, just enough to keep them alive and moving. Damage report, Reed ordered, his voice steady despite the situation. Davis ran a quick diagnostic on his half-functioning console. Main power grid is fried. Weapons systems offline. Shields at 12%. The ghost drive is completely dead. He looked up, his expression mixed with worry and wonder. But sir, the Prometheus drive, it worked. The Vorn fleet is completely disabled. Reed stood, moving to the main view screen which now showed only static. Communications. Can we contact the Coalition? The communications officer shook her head. Long-range comms are down, sir. We can try to boost the emergency beacon, but I don't know if it will reach Kalmar. Do it, Reed ordered. And get me any visual on the Vorn fleet, even if you have to look out a window with binoculars. As the crew worked to restore basic functionality, Morgan moved to Reed's side. What do you think Krell will do now? He asked quietly. Reed's face was thoughtful. If I know Vorn thinking, and I've spent years studying it, he'll be reconsidering the entire campaign. The Prometheus wave didn't just disable his ships. It showed him a weapon he's never seen before, can't defend against, and doesn't understand. Fear, Morgan said with dawning comprehension. We've given him something to fear. Reed nodded. The most powerful weapon isn't the one that destroys your enemy. It's the one that convinces them not to fight in the first place. The communications officer called from her station. Captain, we've managed to get short-range comms back online. And, sir, there's a message coming from the Vorn command ship. Reed and Morgan exchanged surprised glances. Put it through, Reed ordered. The static on the main screen cleared slightly, revealing the scared face of War Master Krell. His yellow eyes glowed with a mixture of rage and, most importantly, caution. Captain Reed, the Vorn commander's translated voice came through with occasional breaks in transmission. It seems, your reputation, not exaggerated. Reed stood straighter, facing his adversary. War Master Krell, your ships will regain power within a few hours. The effect is temporary. Krell's expression shifted slightly. A mercy or a weakness? A choice, Reed replied. I could have destroyed your fleet. Instead, I've given you a chance to make a choice of your own. The Vorn was silent for a moment. And what choice would that be, human? Withdraw from Coalition space. Return to your territory. Find another solution to your resource problems that doesn't involve conquest. Krell's face twisted in what might have been a laugh. Or you will destroy us next time. Reed's expression remained calm. There doesn't need to be a next time, War Master. The Coalition is willing to negotiate trade agreements, resource-sharing plans. War benefits neither of us. The Vorn do not negotiate with inferiors, Krell said, but his tone lacked conviction. Then consider this, Reed said. The weapon we just used was a prototype, a test model. Even now, Earth is building more, installing them on other ships. How many fleets are you willing to lose before you accept that some enemies are too costly to fight? The communication link fell silent for several long seconds, and Reed wondered if they had lost the connection. Then Krell's voice returned. "You are an unusual species, humans. You build weapons of incredible destruction, then hesitate to use them." The Vorn commander's yellow eyes narrowed. "We will withdraw. For now. But the Vorn Empire does not forget, Captain Reed." "Neither do humans, Warmaster," Reed replied. "Remember that." The screen went blank as Krall ended the transmission. On the bridge of the Nemesis, the crew exchanged hopeful glances. "Did we just win?" Davis asked. Reed turned to look at his sensor officer. "For today, at least." He addressed the entire bridge. "Good work, all of you. Now let's see about getting this ship moving again before the Vorn change their minds." 3 days later, the damaged Nemesis limped into orbit around Kalmar. The Coalition fleet moved to escort the human vessel, their earlier distrust replaced by a newfound respect. Admiral Levix himself came aboard to meet with Reed. The Coalition commander's scaled face showed clear signs of stress, but there was no hiding his relief and gratitude. "The Vorn fleet has withdrawn from Coalition space entirely," Levix reported as they walked through the damaged corridors of the Nemesis. "Our long-range scouts confirm they're returning to their own territory." Reed nodded. "They're pragmatic. They won't waste resources on a fight they don't think they can win." Levix stopped, turning to face the human captain. "You saved Kalmar. Saved billions of lives. The Coalition Council has authorized me to offer Earth an immediate upgrade in membership status. Full voting rights, access to all technology exchanges." "Earth will be pleased," Reed said. The alien commander seemed hesitant. "There is one more thing. Many in the Coalition are curious about this new weapon you deployed, the one that disabled the Vorn fleet without destroying it. Such technology would be valuable to share." Reed's expression revealed nothing. "I'll relay your interest to Earth Command, Admiral. But some technologies aren't meant to be shared, even with allies." Levix nodded slowly. "I understand, and perhaps it is better this way. Some legends are more powerful when the details remain mysterious." He extended a scaled hand in the human gesture of respect he had learned. "The Nemesis will always be welcome in Coalition space, Captain Reed." After Levix departed, Reed made his way to the observation deck. The ship's repairs were underway, but it would be weeks before the Nemesis was fully operational again. Through the viewport he could see Kalmar below, its blue oceans and green continents untouched by war. Morgan found him there, gazing at the planet they had saved. "Orders from Earth Command, Captain," the XO reported. "Once repairs are complete, we're to return to Earth." "And then?" Reed asked. Morgan handed him the data tablet. "They're keeping the Nemesis active. No more reserve status. They want you to remain in command." Reed was silent for a long moment. "After everything that happened at Proxima, I never thought they'd trust me with this ship again." "The Nemesis needs you," Morgan said simply. "And maybe you need it too." Reed turned back to the viewport. Somewhere out there, the story of what had happened between the Nemesis and the Vorn fleet was already spreading, growing, becoming legend. "The most powerful weapon isn't the one that destroys your enemy," he repeated quietly. "It's the one that convinces them not to fight in the first place." "Is that what we are now, sir?" Morgan asked. "A weapon?" Reed considered the question. "No," he said finally. "We're something more complicated than that. We're the monster under the bed that keeps the real monsters at bay. The shadow that makes even conquerors think twice." He touched the cool glass of the viewport, looking out at the stars where countless civilizations lived in peace, unaware of how close they had come to war. "That's the weight of legend, XO," he said, "and the burden we carry." As the Nemesis orbited silently above Kalmar, its black hull absorbing the light of the system's sun, word of its deed spread throughout the galaxy. On 100 worlds, in 1,000 languages, beings told the story of the human ship that had faced a Vorn armada alone, and won. With each telling, the story grew. Some said the nemesis could turn invisible. Others claimed it could disable entire fleets with a wave of energy. Still others whispered that its captain had stared into the eyes of the fearsome War Master Krall and made him retreat through words alone. Not all the stories were true. But perhaps that didn't matter. Because the most powerful legend of all was the one that ended not with destruction, but with enemies turning away, choosing peace over war, life over death. And in the vastness of space, where conflict had raged for millennia, that was perhaps the greatest victory of all.